Hey, this is John Reed, JohnERP.com. I've got a great lineup on the contestants here for the cloud panel. So we're going to meet your contestants on my left, or maybe it'll be on your right. I'm not sure. We have Jarret Pazahanick, SAP. Jarret, what's up, Jarret?
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
And then I've got Leo DeRoyo. What's up, man?
Hey, good. Really happy to be here, man. Thanks.
And then on my extreme right, which may be your left, I don't know, we've got Dick Hirsch winning the Time Zone Trooper Award. What's up, Dick?
Yeah, doing good. Glad to be here, as usual.
So we're going to try to make sense of SAP's cloud strategy today, which seems like a really, really, really tough thing to try to do. But what we're going to try to do is basically go into three different areas in a little depth. We're going to start with Jarret and SuccessFactors. Then we're going to switch over, talk with Leo about ByDesign, and then we're going to talk with Dick about NetWeaver Cloud. And we seem to have a little bit of an echo. So, all right, fast forward to half an hour. Now we have overcome some technical challenges. Jarret, you've been a trooper. If you guys can hear a little background noise, that's because there's someone I'm really annoyed at that's making noise outside of my office. So I'm going to mute out most of the time. But anyway, let's focus in on Jarret here for a little while and talk about SuccessFactors. Jarret, you've been to a number of shows since our last taping we did on the cloud, including a Sapphire show, a SuccessFactors show. You've really had a chance to kick tires on this. So kick it off. Let us know, where do you think we stand right now?
Yeah, I have to say I'm a lot more informed than I was when we had this last taping. And sometimes that information is a good thing, and sometimes it opens up some more questions. Some of the interesting things that I found out is that SAP is putting a lot of development might behind the Employee Central product. So for those of you who don't know, if you think of the core HR system, your personal administration, your org management, your payroll, that's what you consider core HR, and that's an area that Workday plays very strongly in, and it's an area that SuccessFactors had sort of up until recently just had kicked off that initial product. And so when SAP bought SuccessFactors, they've put a lot of development might. I've heard behind the scenes there's 300 to 400 developers working on Employee Central to build that out. So that's really going to be their next generation. They're offering. I think their go-to-market strategy, if you're a brand new customer, they're looking to push the Employee Central product. If you're an existing customer, they're looking to do a hybrid approach where you keep your core and you move to use the SuccessFactors products for talent, compensation, etc. One thing that jumps out at me is whenever I hear SAP's putting 300 to 400 developers on something, it always begs the question, how come we're not seeing more stuff quicker? Especially when you compare that to the smaller forces at Workday and some of the products that they're developing, it's something that's always eaten at me. Even in other products in the past, when you hear a lot of people are working on it, you just wonder how come stuff isn't happening quicker. Just curious to get your guys' thoughts just in general on that.
In terms of, we are talking about summer right now, so I think that's probably one reason why things are going a little bit slower. That's not an excuse, but I think it's just the reality.
I guess another.
I think it's a valid point too. I have the same impression sometimes. We run consulting and we run projects with sometimes 20 developers, and we can accomplish a lot. I just wonder if I had 300, what I would be able to do. But I guess it follows development timelines. I haven't always agreed with that.
Jarret, one thing too that I get confused by sometimes is SAP hasn't been especially communicative this summer to the outside about what's been happening, and sometimes I think there is progress, it's just not communicated very well. I don't know if you think that's the issue here. Or...
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. I think that for many years I've mentioned SAP that I think that they need to communicate in many channels, and I mentioned that to SuccessFactors as well. It was really interesting at the show because they would announce functionality that they had released 6 months ago. SuccessFactors does 4 releases a year, and some customers were standing up and cheering inside of the meetings. They have a very passionate customer group there, but and it just struck me as these were changes that were already there, but they were just hearing about them for the first time. So I've gotten the impression, at least in the SAP HR space, is that you need to let customers know information from multiple channels. I think that they need to hear it from the vendor. I think they need to hear it in forums like this. They need to hear it in their user group. And you need to hit the same message multiple times for it to sink in. But two of the big things I did mention is at Sapphire, they announced integration between SuccessFactors, between SAP and SuccessFactors. It's going to be delivered in sort of 5 waves. The first wave is just sort of getting the core master data, if you're an SAP customer, over to SuccessFactors. And then in various waves over the next 12 to 18 months, they're going to roll out additional integration, both back and forth between those products, which is something really customers really are demanding. And the other big thing they announced about a month ago, very, very, very quietly, was a beta cloud payroll offering. And what they've really done here is they've taken their on-premise payroll product. It's a very strong product, one that I've actually worked with for 14 years, and they're actually hosting it and putting it in the cloud. So for all those true, everything needs to be multi-tenant SaaS folks, they don't see this as a really a valid solution. But for customers that are looking for payroll in the cloud and they're an Employee Central customer, they will have an option now.
Then I just have one question for you, Jarret. When you're talking about this on-premise for payroll that is being deployed, can you just precise exactly what you're talking about? You're talking about HR payroll, SAP, ECC, ERP, HR payroll?
Yeah, that's correct. So it's the same. So they have payroll right now they claim 90 countries, but really that's with a combination of partner solutions and SAP solutions. But for give or take around 50 countries, SAP has a homegrown payroll offering that customers have been, tried and true, that customers have been using. So I'll give you an example. They have a US payroll offering. So what customers would do is that they would sign up for this cloud payroll. What SAP will have this in the cloud. It's going to be hosted out of Germany, out of a data center in Germany, which begs some questions there. Just in general, only one data center. And what will happen is they're going to try to longer term make it for the customers appear somewhat seamless, that they log into their multi-tenant Employee Central. And what will happen behind the scenes, it gets a little ugly, but via Boomi, data will be replicated over to this on-premise solution that's really in the cloud now. So each customer will have sort of their own cloud, so to speak. And the interesting thing about that is, I don't know if you guys were at Sapphire, but there was in the Q&A session, they asked Jim Snabe about ByDesign and how it's had, all these iterations over the years, and how SAP had to restart that because of the basic design they had at the beginning, how they realized that it needed to be multi-tenant for some of the efficiencies and some of the cost benefits that you get from that. But yet here we go with this payroll cloud solution, sort of back in time a little bit with the deployment option. And the real reason is SAP couldn't build a cloud payroll offering. Workday's been at it for 6 years now, and they have 2 countries. So it's very complex to build a cloud payroll solution from scratch.
Jarret, how have partners responded to the changes in SuccessFactors? They've had time now to sort of take a look at the solution, maybe kick the tires. Are there more partners who are involved? Are they interested? Are they disappointed in the progress? What are your feelings about that?
Yeah, I think if you're talking about the cloud payroll, that's only a few weeks old. So if you're a SuccessFactors partner, you're going to have no idea how to install SAP payroll, because that expertise needs to be an on-premise person. So that's a bit of an outlier. One of the interesting things I've found is that SuccessFactors has signed up a lot of partners, and a lot of those partners are your SAP HCM consulting firms. All your large big SIs are all jumping in now, realizing sort of that the new gold rush is going to be in SuccessFactors. So it's a very interesting time, because you have consultants that have 10, 12 years experience in SAP, but they don't have any SuccessFactors experience. And so all these big SIs are trying, and even smaller SIs are trying to win that first project. And they really have no experience in SuccessFactors. So it's a very interesting time. They have the relationships, but they really don't know the product that well. And then the true, SuccessFactors SIs that have been doing it for many years, I just don't think there's enough enough volume of those people out there to be able to handle all the work that'll be coming to them. So it's really customers really have to beware right now of making sure you get someone that has experience.
Right. I was just saying, how would customers respond to an SAP SI who just came and is doing their first SuccessFactors project? Probably wouldn't be too pleased.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we all pound the ground, say get references, find that information, make sure that people have actually done this work before, and it's just a really interesting time right now. I mean, I personally think customers should find someone that has SuccessFactors experience outside of rare cases where you have sort of a known entity that knows your business and you're comfortable with them learning on the job. And again, the SuccessFactors products, there's no development in the SuccessFactors products. It's all configuration. Most SAP consultants are used to hundreds and thousands of tables to be able to configure. So the tool itself is pretty simple. But again, you still want to make sure you have someone that has that business expertise, first and foremost, technical expertise to deliver.
One thing that will be interesting to see is the same clash we've seen in the past in terms of cultural clash, where people coming from the SAP HCM expertise, the SIs you're talking about, they are used to very large projects, very big teams. And now you have this suite of products that are simple to implement and maybe implementation in weeks. And it's going to be interesting to see how they will cope with that, with a different reality of consulting.
Yeah, Leo, that's very interesting because I talked to a couple consultants at Success Connect that talked about having 6 projects going on simultaneously. And I don't know any very many on-premise customers, on-premise consultants that are doing 6 projects at the same time. And again, the big consulting companies really don't have a model to reward their employees for working 6 projects at the same time either. So, I think there's a real opportunity here. Very similar to what you're probably going to talk to us about in the ByDesign space, where there's a little bit of a niche for it's a totally different model on go-to-market. It'll just be interesting to see how the larger companies, the larger consulting companies, are able to adjust.
Jarret, one thing I wanted to touch on too is SAP. One of my criticisms of SAP's cloud strategy is I feel like there's been a little too much focus on what the competition is doing and how do we stack up. I can't go more than a month without reading an article from some SAP executives saying, well, this will help us compete better with Workday on this or that. And so when you get back to this multi-tenancy issue, I don't necessarily think that's the most important thing, though I understand what the concerns are there. My question is more on user experience. And one of the things Workday is really well known for, if you want to take Workday as an example, is having almost like a transformative user experience, a superior user experience. And that's, I guess, my question for you around the HCM side for SAP is are those products really from a user experience perspective transformative, or does that maybe not matter that much to SAP customers anyway? Like maybe they care more about, okay, payroll works in my region and it's in the cloud and it works well, so that's fine. Like, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think SAP customers that are looking at SuccessFactors are really happy with the user interface and the user experience, that they're coming from the SAP side. And SAP is also, they have a project called the Core Renovation on the HR side to actually sort of, that started before SuccessFactors to sort of freshen up that user experience. So I think in general, I think the customers, of course the customers want to have a good user experience, and I really believe that SuccessFactors has a solid product and a good user experience. I mean, I logged into a test system, and I was very easily able to navigate through the system. And how many of us could log into a SAP system today and be able to navigate through that system without some training? So I think that side of it, SuccessFactors has got the right vision in place. They've got a mobile-first strategy. They've got a lot of stuff on mobile. I heard Lars at Success Connect was very adamant about everything needs to be mobile first. Although, I got a little chuckle because I saw Bill McDermott mention that this week too, that's how SAP approaches everything, and their core product is mobile first. And don't know if I can always agree with that, but that side of it's good. And John, I don't know if you remember, but you and I were sitting next to each other at Sapphire when Lars sort of showed that new next generation look and feel of where he wants to go with sort of that flipboard style navigation. And that's something that the on-demand team, the friends from the on-demand team are sort of leading that effort, sort of code-named Bubblegum behind the scenes. But he's got a team of, I think, 10 or 12 people that are looking to come up with that type of user experience. And that was, that was very sharp looking.
Well, Jarret, I feel like we've extracted a lot of quality from you with the audio. We're starting to push our luck a little bit, so I'm going to shift gears to Leo, but we actually got that done. So thanks for troubleshooting those audio issues. I think we're pretty good. By the way, for the viewers, if you pick up a little sweat on my brow, I actually killed all the air in my space here to get a better audio, so I'm like not nervous about the discussion. I'm just struggling a little bit with the temperature in the room here. So all right, Leo, let's shift gears to you and talk about ByDesign. Just to frame the discussion briefly, at Sapphire around that time, I thought there were some pretty irresponsible articles written by people that don't understand SAP very well, talking about, the death of ByDesign, and ByDesign is going away. And there was never, in my mind, real evidence of that. But there was definitely questions about the future of this product. And as a partner and someone who is also actively talking to SAP in this area, why don't you tell us what's really happening?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. At Sapphire, we had this very disappointing message, at least for me. I expected to hear a lot more on ByDesign. We'll be investing on it, we're putting a practice together. I believe a lot in the product. And then we get there, and the focus is completely elsewhere. And there was this mixed message: is there a future out there or not? Not wanting to jump into conclusions, but we wanted to get clarifications. And as a spin-off out of Sapphire, I was able to contact people, had opportunity to go to Waldorf. I met some executives there. And actually, I'm going to release a blog in the next week with some videos that I was able to get with Reiner and Werner, and that's responsible for the SDK side. So trying to get this understanding, what is really the message behind, because the message was not delivered correctly at the Sapphire. We have to agree on that. Actually, SAP recognized that. So my whole take on this is I believe in the tool, and if I look from a product perspective, SAP has never been stronger than what it is today. It's at this point in functionality, its peak in functionality. We can have an argument on how much has been brought up in terms of feature packs and how fast things are. That's another discussion, but right now it's the most advanced version there is, the most number of countries, languages, SDKs available for all partners to do one-offs, meaning development for customers on their system tenants, just for specific customers. Anyway, it's really, it's the point where I believe ByDesign should shine at this point, and I don't see any marketing push that is deserved. I think that's where the time one should be pushing for ByDesign adoption, ByDesign sales from an SAP governance. We're doing our job as partners, but I feel a little bit disappointed that things are too quiet on the ByDesign side.
Leo, what do you think about the whole push that came out at Sapphire, that they want to have these sort of like new applications, my money, my customers, that were sort of taking parts of ByDesign and reusing them? Did you view that as something that was a threat, or how did you view that whole situation?
I still don't quite understand that approach, honestly, what I know about it. From a perspective of ByDesign being a software that was built as one suite of individual units that talk to each other using what they call the loosely coupled approach. If you want to beef it up, financials, why don't you beef it up? ByDesign financials. ByDesign has a scoping tool that is great, that if you don't want to use anything else but financials, scope it down, and what you don't need is shut down, you don't see it. So why break it down in pieces? That I don't understand. I don't understand that as a strategy. I would believe that if you were putting money, development investment, you should put in ByDesign and make it even more is scopable and configurable, but continue investing by design and going now with these different financials and little pieces here and there. I don't understand. And the other thing is, if you're looking for an ERP, financials on demand is not an ERP, it's a solution for financials. You will need the rest of it. So at the end, you're going to end up getting a whole bunch of things and connecting them. I don't understand that.
Yeah, and just for some clarification there too, my understanding of what SAP is trying to do there is they've come to some decisions around how they want to position ByDesign in the market, and what they've essentially decided is that Business One is definitely their SME product, and it's going to also be their SME cloud product. And so they're looking at ByDesign in a clear mid-sized territory, 25 employees and up, and also subsidiary angles, right? And so they're also putting kind of a ceiling on where they think ByDesign can go, because SAP has basically decided, in their opinion, that the cloud ERP is not going to be relevant for the large enterprise anytime soon. And so they're not investing development in turning ByDesign into a large enterprise cloud product. They are trying to move up market, but in the mid-market section. I would view NetSuite as the main competitor if you had to pick one out for ByDesign. With financials on demand, what SAP is trying to do is they're essentially looking at a line of business cloud strategy where they can go head-to-head against other what you might call point solutions or line of business solutions. So they have to be thinking about Workday, and I've seen a couple of quotes and interactions that convince me of that as well, because Workday's now rolling out a financials component also, right? So they want to be able to say we've got SuccessFactors and we've got financials on demand. So I look at it as a large enterprise strategy decision on SAP's part, and I think it's really hard to question in the short term that SAP's correct, that the large enterprise is purchasing SaaS solutions in a line of business oriented fashion. So I understand why they needed a financials, but where the interesting discussion comes in is whether in the long term cloud ERP is not going to be a factor in the large enterprise or not, because if it is, then SAP needs to be working on it and they've kind of pulled away from it. So I think that's what gets kind of interesting in my view.
Yeah, but I think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, John, that's a really interesting point, because some of the competitors are actually looking to build out that ERP suite, either by building out the product, like you said, at Workday, or actually building out their partnerships. So just a question would be, is if SAP wakes up 2 years from now and decides, that not investing in ByDesign was not a good strategy, how quickly will they be able to react? Because it's pretty hard to play catch up with some of these innovative competitors they have.
Yeah. And taking the large enterprise out of the picture, I agree with you, John. I don't think ByDesign is a fit there. But the solution today for medium-sized companies is all-in-one. So if ByDesign is to one day replace ByDesign or all-in-one, ByDesign has to go catch up in terms of functionality. It has to get more depth, and that only comes from development investment.
Right. Well, development investment, but also partner SDK development, right? And that's the other thing I was hoping you could touch on, because, my buddy Judson on Twitter is giving me a hard time because I was saying that, this is new that the SDK is available to partners. And he was like, oh, no, that's been available for months now. So help me out. Isn't it new what's happening now with your access to the SDK for all partners, or is that old, or is that old news? What's going on?
It had to be Judson bugging you on this one. Let me just explain. I mean, SDK has been available for a few partners, actually for a little while. Some of them is guinea pigs, but no, I'm just joking. Some partners have started earlier, and that's great. Maybe Accenture is one of them, Logic and others. But what happened recently, and this is something I think it was around May or June, that's when they announced general availability. Like everything in SAP, there's a ramp up. So what I mean is other partners had access before, probably ramp up mode and things like that, but general availability. Any partner wanting to sign up to have access to ByDesign SDK could have right away. The other thing was, before SDK was available, but the entry level would require 3 live customers, train people, blah, 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 a whole bunch of requirements that would put most of the partners out. That is what was reduced in May or June. So now all partners pretty much could sign up for Access to SDK to build solutions for customers, not for SAP Store.
Right, so we're not talking about the ability to build apps for the App Store yet in terms of...
Yes, that exists. I mean, it can build today. It's just a separate agreement that you need in SAP, and the requirements are higher.
So you're talking about what you're looking at is the ability to create what's called last mile solutions for customers, right? So you're basically saying you can close more business because you can go to a customer and say, if you need that extra 10% that will help you to use this product, I can build it for you. Is that basically what you have now?
Exactly. Given the same flexibility we had with A1 running SAP ERP, extremely deep product, but there's no implementation in the world without one line of ABAP custom code. So the same type of approach, meaning that you can build a little extra thing that is missing here and there to help close a deal or just deliver functionality that the customer wants. Now we can have with an SDK approach.
But in the long term, as you're pointing out, if you want ByDesign to be, say, considered a replacement option for or a competitor to all-in-one in terms of functionality, then your partners are going to have to be able to do more than last mile solutions, right? They're going to have to be able to develop industry components that are much more full-fledged, right? I mean, is that what we're going to need to see, is the ability to do that, or...?
Yeah, well, if you're looking at a replacement of ByDesign, because of the scope and the depth of functionality of current ByDesign, it only fits some scenarios, because really you can't compare those two products. SAP ERP is very vast. It's miles away from what ByDesign is today.
But I think the question is, do they really want to go that direction, or do they want to have a much more lightweight product, much more standardized with much more control? I mean, you don't want to replicate all the problems that are in an on-premise environment ByDesign, because that's not really the goal of the product.
Yeah, correct. I think there are two sides of this question. You're right about that. You don't want to rebuild all this custom-specific and get a more standardized process, but there are areas where ByDesign is not ready, far from ready. I mean, I don't think it's realistic to have ByDesign running in retail, for example. You know, some complex retails and some very complex pricing, commodity pricing, let's say, businesses. There are very good fits in manufacturing, distribution, professional services, but some areas are more weak because it's a product that is newer. It's normal. For those, it's complicated to think about using SDK to build everything.
Hey, Leo, I have a question regarding from the HR side. I know BYD has some HR functionality. Whenever I've talked to SAP, it's been difficult to find actual customers that are using it. And now, given Lars being in charge of the whole cloud and SuccessFactors having products that sort of are aimed at all the various market levels, how do you envision that unfolding? Do you envision them making any investment in ByDesign? Do you envision them trying to hook up ByDesign and SuccessFactors, and any insight on that?
Nothing that I know formally, but if I had to bet, I would think that investments on ByDesign HCM components would cease pretty much, because on that regard, the functionality, the suite of SuccessFactors is more advanced than ByDesign talent management and so on. The way I see it is, again, it's a very personal perspective, but I would see a move towards making those two start talking.
I thought one of the interesting things from Sapphire was having a chance to really ask Lars Dahlgaard directly, what's the future of ByDesign, and can we be confident in it going forward? And the one thing I really got from him is, well, first of all, they've assigned they've kind of reorganized the development team around ByDesign, and now it's based out of India, 200 developers going forward. And there's actually been a recent article on that, and I think you blogged about that coming up as well by the time this goes live. But then he said something pretty simple, which was, we're keeping ByDesign going because it sells, which I thought seemed fairly logical, right? Has that been your experience? Do you think ByDesign is a sellable product at this point in the space you work in?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a fit for a lot of customers. We have quite a few leads. It's an appealing product, but You should invest in marketing, make sure that the message continues. The message from SAP on ByDesign was very strong a couple of years ago. So many videos, so many nice YouTube animations, and we have very little of these things.
So what's the value proposition of ByDesign to customers right now? How would you describe it?
Describe it as a sophisticated ERP solution that is fully as cloud software as a service, is built from ground up that way. I like a lot of the interface. I find great. I think it brings a lot of the best of SAP into a solution for mid-sized companies. Mid-sized companies can run software as a service cloud solution from SAP that has, powered by HANA analytics, that has built-in mobility without the complications and complexity of pricing and so on. So it's hard not to like it, and it's deep as a product.
Oh well, if the analytics are powered by HANA, then that's a no-brainer, right? That's HANA for the win.
Yeah, but just a point about that. Mobility for ByDesign is a success story. It should be really brought up more often.
Yeah, I think you were telling me that you thought the mobile skins, I think you were calling them, or the mobile extensions were really cool.
Yeah, well, you have an app that you download for iPhone. I'm not sure the status on the Android, Windows. They have their players, and this player connects to the backend ByDesign, gets all your work centers, so all your navigations, and renders those screens that were built by ByDesign, most of them, and renders them properly in the iPhone. So we can develop centrally using the SDK or SAP developers in one place that screen or the business process, that transaction, and it renders in whichever device is running that player.
Guys, any more questions for Leo before we put Dick on the hot seat?
Yeah, just one quick question, Leo. I was just curious how ByDesign project is sort of different from a consulting standpoint than an on-premise project. Yeah,
this is I'm glad you brought it up. At the beginning, we were getting a lot of info from what even SAP was expecting the projects to be. Oh, this is something you're going to spend weeks and implement. It's very easy. It's a matter of hours, and your teams are going to be working 4 or 5 different projects at the same time, and very short and very little consulting. It's more like volume-based. Reality is a lot closer to SAP ERP projects from a perspective of the scoping, complexity, cycles of discovery, and so there's more consulting services than we expected initially on ByDesign project.
So, Dick, now it's time to force you to make sense of all this. With all these different cloud plays, I think you do a better job of explaining how they might fit together architecturally, conceptually, than anyone at SAP does. It's a running joke that SAP should hire you. You probably don't think that's funny.
The offer hasn't come yet.
Explain this to us.
I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it. I mean, I think what's important is to see that SAP wants to offer have a cloud offering for each market segment, as you mentioned before, and it's not as easy as you might expect, because there are competitions between the various organizations who have these different layers. When does a certain market segment end? And I think that has a big impact on how the cloud strategy as a global strategy is taking place. And I think it's not really clear to me how they want to fit all this stuff together, because you had a sort of a transition from the old idea with the edge and the core, and that was the idea that you had sort of the core were the ERP applications, and the edge was sort of these lightweight, more cloud applications. But that was sort of slowly but surely was decided that it was a little bit confusing for the users and for the customers. And right now, I think they're still trying to figure out exactly what they want to do. And I think if you look at, I mean, the NetWeaver Cloud as one example, I mean, right now I think they sort of want to have the SaaS applications for whatever market segment, and then the platform as a service should be more or less the NetWeaver Cloud, and that's sort of the goal that they want to have. I mean, it's a much more of a vertical rather than a horizontal strategy, and the question is, how far are they to really moving in this direction? And I think what was really interesting to seeing how the people, I mean, for me it's always interesting to see how the NetWeaver Cloud sort of has evolved. And it was announced at Sapphire that it was now publicly available and developers could get online to use it. And I've been very interested to see how SAP responds to these developers. And there is a forum on SDN where I always sort of see what sort of developers are using it, for example. And you see developers internal from SAP and external developers who are now sort of kicking the tires on this new environment. And it's also intriguing to see that there's a real interaction between SAP and these developers, but it's at a very low level right now. I mean, they're more or less, they're seeing it as a new development platform. And I think this is a certain dilemma that SAP is going to have in terms of moving the NetWeaver Cloud from beyond this sort of development platform to a platform where people can really do business applications. And I think if you look at, for example, this might be a little bit too technical, but if you look at the APIs which are currently available for developers, they are very technical. They're very low level in nature. And I think if you're a partner who wants to develop an application rapidly on the platform, what you really have is you have the difficulty that there's no real service layer that has sort of a business flavor. You have very low-level technical APIs, and I think that's sort of a dilemma for SAP to sort of say, okay, this is the platform that we have, and the thing that distinguishes our development platform from other platforms isn't the technology, rather it's the business logic. That's sort of I always call it the treasure chest of SAP, and they haven't opened this yet. And that's where the value is going to come. And I'm a little bit disappointed that they're moving too slowly in this direction as I might have expected.
Yeah, because to me it's all about creating a coherent platform where people can develop business applications easily that enhance existing products. That's, to me, the bottom line, right? And the problem is that when you assimilate cloud solutions from different acquisitions and from different development environments, it seems to be a real challenge, right, to create a coherent, cohesive platform, because you have like more of an ABAP pass, where we might refer to as the, where ByDesign and Sales on Demand come from, and then maybe SuccessFactors fits into the Java pass that we call NetWeaver Cloud, and then you always throw another like curveball at us by starting to talk about the HANA App Cloud and this other development environment that SAP has been using internally to develop HANA apps that don't fit into the other stuff. So is this a mess, or is this working, or I don't quite understand?
I mean, it is to a certain degree. It's a mess, and I think it's based a little bit on the organization of SAP. I mean, you have two organizations. You have the HANA organization, who has the HANA App Cloud, and then I would call the non-HANA, which is more like the SuccessFactors based on Lars. And they have two platforms, which some people say they're the same, but they're really different. And you can see if you start looking at the applications, the HANA applications, which are in the cloud, SOP, for example, the new ones, or Recalls Plus, they're not based on the NetWeaver Cloud, they're based on the HANA App Cloud. And so there's a certain distinction here between the two platforms. And it's, for customers, it's confusing. I mean, of course, the customer, what's important to the customer is really what comes out. I mean, what's the application that I'm using? And whether it's running on the HANA App Cloud or on the NetWeaver Cloud is actually irrelevant. The main thing is, does it achieve the functionality that I really want?
But Dick, is it totally irrelevant? Because can't you foresee a day where a customer might want to build an app using a PaaS? I mean, I know there's other PaaS vendors out there that want to help customers build apps. So wouldn't that be relevant someday for a customer?
I think you have to distinguish. I mean, if you're talking about the HANA App Cloud, I mean, for me right now, that is the location where SAP builds their HANA-based applications. I know of no customer who has built an application there yet.
Right.
I mean, there could be. So that's the one distinction there. But if we're looking at in terms of platform as a services between a comparison between NetWeaver Cloud and something else, you're correct. I mean, SAP has to realize that the other vendors in the space are moving towards business. You look at the Amazon platform, for example. They're also starting to move, for example, mail or workflows. They're rather simplistic now, but they're moving towards a business focus, which definitely threatens what SAP is doing.
Hey Dick, this is Jarret. Just a couple questions. Do you have any sense of what the engagement's been like so far, and and really what does success look like in this area?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on what the goals are. I mean, right now, SAP is still trying to move if we look at NetWeaver as NetWeaver Cloud, they're still trying to move it into the development sort of ecosystem of SAP. I mean, long term, they obviously want to move beyond that. But I think right now the focus is just on SAP developers who are looking at a place where they can develop applications. And some of the forum posts have been interesting. I mean, some have been looking at, for example, porting existing applications. And other people looking at new applications. But the feeling that I get in terms of the forum post is that they're still very low level. Of course, there's a beta program for customers and for partners that probably has a different level of interaction, a different level of application usage, but the public one shows that it's still, they're working hard, but it's still at a very low level right now. Although, I mean, there were some interesting applications that I saw, for example, people interacting with external platforms, for example, from Apple. So the work is actually, people are looking at this stuff, but it's not happening very much. The majority of questions on the forum are more, I get an exception when I try and install the SDK, for example. But the one thing I have to say for SAP is that I'm pleased that they're doing all this publicly. Because otherwise this might be stuck somewhere, maybe in an OSS ticket or something, and here it's publicly available so everyone can learn from it, which is a big step. But I think they should be pushing it more. They should be pushing it more rapidly. I mean, I assume at the Tech Eds we'll be able to see a lot more in terms of how far they're advancing, but I was expecting more in terms of internal SAP developments on the platforms. Of course, it's still in beta. It's not GA, so there can be one reason that there's nothing publicly available. But I was expecting more.
One of my pet peeves with this whole thing, I think, one thing I noticed is that as they buy these different companies, they have some different challenges that they haven't had in the past when they've tried to build organically. So, they've always sort of said, oh, look how long it takes Oracle to do things because Oracle acquired all these companies. Now I think with SuccessFactors, Ariba, I think SAP is getting a little bit more of a sense of that, obviously Sybase as well. But my pet peeve with a bit of this is once they put out any of these developer platforms, sometimes they seem to say, well, we're only going to take it so far and we're going to count on our partners to take it the rest of the way. And in some cases, I think they're stopping a little bit shorter along the path of what they should be delivering to their customers. So they're saying, okay, we'll give you X and we'll let our partners take it, the last mile. And a lot of times, the structure isn't there or the demand in the market isn't there for the partners to be willing to do that. And I think that ultimately hurts SAP and hurts the customers. So.
Right. And I think what's interesting is to think about maybe in a year or so, what happens when the ecosystem really kicks in and the partners start developing applications. How is SAP going to respond to the competition? Because if you look at certain problems that occurred recently, for example, with Twitter changing their APIs so that third-party vendors would have more difficulty using providing the same functionality as Twitter. I was always thinking, how would SAP respond if, for example, if another partner went in and did a app which covered part of travel on demand? Is that possible? And this sort of competition is going to be interesting because in the past, if you look at the on-premise world, I mean, you have this huge block of content, but if we're moving towards mobile apps based in the cloud, the content is relatively limited. And what's going to happen if SAP brings out an app based on the NetWeaver Cloud and a partner comes and says, that's good, let me change a little bit and have something similar? What's going to happen there? And this is sort of the competition, cloud-based competition, which I'm going to be curious to see how SAP responds.
Yeah, and I guess we would be remiss in pointing out that in the fourth quarter of this year, if all goes as planned, there's going to be another $4 billion addition to this interesting picture, shall we say,
Correct.
of SAP Cloud with Ariba. No one inside SAP is allowed to comment on Ariba whatsoever. We're allowed to, though. Unfortunately, we don't have a procurement expert like Tridip on the call today, unfortunately. Right. Guys, any comments on how Ariba thickens this plot?
Well, I mean, for me, it's interesting to think about they bought SuccessFactors for the cloud DNA. Okay? They can't say with Ariba, we're buying it for the cloud DNA, because otherwise there's a conflict between what SuccessFactors provides and what Ariba provides. So I'm always curious to see what exactly did they buy? And
but Dick,
why?
you can never get enough DNA, man.
That's true, but you never know what comes out. If you combine the DNA for company A, company B, and company C, then some sort of monster might emerge from all this. So I mean, I don't know whether.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they're buying the technology, which I doubt, because now with SuccessFactors they have a sort of a direction they want to go, or whether they're buying the networks themselves, which I think might be more relevant for our conversation. They might just be buying the customers, thinking of cross-selling purposes.
I'll go out on a limb here and say that they bought Ariba for two main reasons. One was the network business aspect that Ariba's sophisticated in, right? The era of the network business. But also, Ariba actually has experience transitioning from an on-premise product to a cloud product. Now, albeit it's a much smaller company than SAP, but they actually went through all those growing pains. So, in my view, that's a different kind of cloud DNA. But whether it will be a perfect coexistence or a complicated drama remains to be seen, right?
Well, I think it'd be interesting to see how. Oh, go ahead, Jarret.
I was going to say that's one thing that I don't think has gotten enough comment is that when SAP bought SuccessFactors, they put Lars in charge of the entire cloud division, and this is a cloud product, and now Lars is, if I understand it, is not responsible for Ariba, and maybe I misinterpreted that, but if that's the case, talking about that DNA, that potentially could have some political infighting, and there's always going to be some challenges moving to the cloud in general from the on-premise folks, and now you may have another sort of a layer of politics internally, and I don't that nothing good can come out of that.
Right. I mean, my assumption that it's going to go into sort of the my suppliers part of sort of these four horsemen idea that Lars has. I mean, right. That would be sort of the area that it would go to, and the question would be, as Jarret says, organizationally, how is that going to fit, and as well in terms of the existing SAP products. I'm not a procurement expert either, so I don't know exactly whether there's a competition there or an overlap.
Right, and the strategy makes sense of acquiring, powerful plays in these four categories, these line of business categories, if you accept that the future of cloud success in the enterprise is going to be kind of focused on line of business segments. If you make the argument that the winner of this game is going to be who builds the best platform and who builds the best application environment for developers and the best ecosystem around that environment, if you accept that argument, which not everybody does, then I see complications ahead with this acquisition. So I don't know, man. Dick, what would you do if you were in charge of the platform side of this? What would you try to accomplish there?
Well, I mean, I would try and assure that there's no competition between these two companies because, as Jarret said, there's going to be a competition. And I would try and make sure that there's no breaks in terms of the customer sort of presentation. Because if they start seeing that there's a gap between what Ariba is providing and what SuccessFactors and what Lars wants to do, then there's going to be a little bit of maybe unease in terms of customers to follow SAP as they move in this sort of on the cloud path.
Leo, were you waving at us or somebody else there?
Somebody left here. Sorry, guys.
Okay, no worries. I thought maybe you were heading out.
I tried not to. I was heading with the signs here, but
no worries. So, guys, I think we're on the wrap portion of our discussion. And so maybe we look ahead a little bit to the fall. Shortly, several of us are going to be attending a brief cloud and mobility event in September. And then the bigger events are the Tech Ed, Vegas, and Madrid. I know you guys are going to at least one of those.
Right.
So tell me about what's your agenda in terms of what are you hoping to learn, contribute, like in terms of SAP Cloud discussions through the fall events?
Who's going to start?
go ahead.
Okay. I mean, for me, what I want to know is I want to know more in terms of how far they've really gotten. Because for me, there's been a certain lack of information regarding their actual progress, and I'm hoping that at the Tech Eds we can actually see what they've accomplished. And I'm also very interested to see in terms of integration how these things are going to integrate. I mean, as Jarret was mentioning before, the current integration is still pretty rudimentary, pretty basic. And I think for SAP to be successful in sort of this hybrid model, they have to be much more inventive in terms of how they integrate these various platforms. And I don't know whether it's using Boomi or whether it's using PI on demand whenever that comes out. But they have to do a better job in making this, first of all, available and making it easy for customers to use. If it's too complicated, then I think there's going to be difficulties.
Did you just say the word Boomi?
Yes.
And you expect that the average listener knows what that means?
Jarret already used it. I'm the second person. Jarret already used it once today.
Jarret, how dare you slip that by me? I must have been distracted by that idiot vacuuming the halls outside my building. Help me out with Boomi, guys.
It's an integration platform that was mentioned as a third-party integration
Probably a better
platform.
one for Dick, but my understanding is just some middleware technology.
Right. It was mentioned at the Sapphire. It's one of the third-party integration platforms that are currently available for integrating, I think it was SuccessFactors, and as Jarret mentioned, it was the integration path for the payroll in the cloud and
Gotcha.
SuccessFactors.
Okay. That makes sense. Well, Dick, for your sake, I hope you get some of that information, because if you don't...
And Dick, they're eventually going to replace that with PI on demand.
Right.
Man, we're starting to... Jarret, we're starting to lose you, man, a little bit. But, man, I'm so psyched we got an hour of Jarret before this deterioration. Dick, can you translate what Jarret was just about to say there?
I mean, it's basically it's a third-party integration platform.
Yeah.
That is currently being used because the PI on demand isn't available yet.
PI on demand?
Yes.
Okay, right. NetWeaver PI. Gotcha.
Okay. Because that's sort of the main path for the future integration of all these different platforms is PI on demand. But I have no idea in terms of its GA or in terms of how far they are.
Another thing to try to learn about this fall, then.
Right.
Let's take our chances on Jarret, see if we can get some audio out of this dude here. Jarret, what are you looking for this fall, man?
Well, first thing I'm going to be looking for is a new computer, because I'm having all these issues today. But once that resolved, I'm really looking to just get a clear understanding of their go-forward strategy, because we've heard a lot of different things at Sapphire, and then we've heard corrections, and now we're hearing breaking apart the suite, and I just want to really make sure I understand all that. So that's one. The second piece that I'm really looking for is I just want SAP to hit the deadlines that they're committing, the roadmaps that they're committing. If they say we're going to have something out in December, I want to see it out in December. They're doing a better job of hitting the deadlines, but they're dropping functionality along the way to hit those deadlines. So, to me, I just want to see them innovate quicker. The competitors are innovating quicker in the cloud space as well. So this is something that, as far as the whole organization has to take that cloud innovation approach where stuff happens quicker, and I just hope we start to see more signs of that.
Leo, you passed the buck long enough, man.
Yeah. Well, from a platform cloud perspective, I just really wanted to see how this all is going to fit together. A lot of pieces. I want to see how this integrates and what's the future direction on bringing this all together. And on the ByDesign side of things, I want to see what type of further pushes from SAP in terms of go-to-market, because the product is ready and the partners are ready. So I want to see that more happening.
Yeah, for me it's a little bit of a mixed bag, because I see that with Ariba coming likely in the fourth quarter, I think a lot could change after that. And I think it's fair to say that there's some unknowns after that happens. And so I'm not sure how many answers I can get this fall. But I think what I'm really going to be looking for more than anything is, first of all, how developers are liking the tools and exposure they're getting to these platforms, and what kind of feedback loop there is there. Because these events are tech events, right? So what better opportunity to understand that. And I guess I'm just looking for just some transparent conversations with SAP, not just with us, but hopefully more publicly. I'd love to see SAP blogging a little more about this stuff, because sometimes I feel like a lot of times the cloud stuff is like, oh, we bought this company, and it feels like, okay, it's a lot of defensive reactions, right? Like protecting against losing the kind of market share they lost when Salesforce came to town and took a lot of CRM away from them, which, I think some folks, including like Hasso, referred to as one of their bigger regrets, so they don't want that to happen again, right? But with HANA, we also pick up on so much excitement and energy. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but everything from like the startup forum with HANA to just the excitement that executives get, like when Vishal starts talking passionately about HANA, and you really get the sense that SAP rallies around HANA as kind of an, we're innovating again and bringing new value and new approaches. And I would love to hear this same kind of excitement around cloud stuff, instead of like what happened to ByDesign and what's going on with these new products and how are they going. I don't always pick up on the same kind of energy. Now there are some cool teams working on cool stuff, but anyway, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is to see if we get more of a vision, because when John Wookie was around, and obviously he didn't take this with him, he left this stuff with him, but there seemed to be this whole kind of design thinking, let's rethink the cloud kind of thing. And admittedly, they had some trouble scaling those ideas, but I thought that was kind of exciting as a conversation, and I would love to see some of that energy come back. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but...
Yeah, but is it even possible? I mean, you can't have that level of energy that's currently attached to HANA be in a company at two times at once, because it just won't work. The company will just burn out. So it could be that the focus is on HANA, and then later it'll be on cloud.
Yep.
But we can't expect the cloud to have the same level of resources or energy. That's just not going to happen.
No, probably not, huh? I guess a guy can wish, huh?
Yep.
Well, hopefully someone will get in my face at one of these shows and tell me why I'm wrong about that. Guys, any parting comments? Glad to have you around for this discussion. Thanks for making it happen.
Yep. See you, Tech Kid.
Yeah? Is that it? Everyone wave? We're good?
Thanks. See you.
Cool. We're good. We're done. Bye, guys.